the word universal, that means we are talking about all. So, instead of all, if we are talking about some of the term is followed by the word some, you call it as particular. Either if it is positive, you call it as particular affirmative, otherwise you call it as particular negative. So, what are the examples here? Some apples are oranges, that is the sentence I was using. So, some apples are oranges. In this, it is a particular affirmative because I am talking about some apples and it is ending with a affirmative thing, are oranges. So, some followed by are, you are going to recognize the statement as a particular affirmative, and a particular negative statement is of the type some apples are not oranges. Again, it is particular because I am using the word some. So, when I am using the word some, it becomes particular, and if I am using a negative thing, it is going to become particular negative. So, with these 4 types of categorical statements, let me take you to categorical arguments. So, categorical arguments consists of 3 statements where first 2 statements are given and third is the conclusion or deduction or inference drawn. So, categorical arguments, when you are talking about categorical arguments, you are given 3 statements. First 2 are your categorical statements, like we have seen now the example, all apples are oranges, all oranges are lemon. So, something like this, 2 categorical statements are given, and by an argument what you mean? Categorical argument is nothing but the conclusion that you draw or the deduction that you draw or inference that you draw from the above 2 statements. So, a categorical argument consists of 3 statements where first 2 statements are given and the third is the conclusion or deduction or inference drawn from those 2 statements. So, in a categorical argument, argument is something which the student takes up based upon the 2 statements that are given. This is the conclusion that we draw. The person who is trying to solve the problem will draw these conclusions based upon the statements that are given. So, typical categorical argument is nothing but, it looks like this, say all apples are oranges, all oranges are bananas. So, what is that you can draw from this? All apples are oranges, all oranges are bananas. So, what is the conclusion that you can draw? What is the inference that you can draw? First of all, you observe the statements that are given. What kind of a statement is first one? All apples are oranges. It is a universal affirmative statement. Second one, all oranges are bananas. That is also a universal affirmative statement. So, you have 2 universal affirmative statements. What is the conclusion that you can draw? Since all apples are oranges, all oranges are bananas, we can draw the conclusion that all apples are bananas. So, this is the typical categorical argument. You will be given 2 statements like all apples are oranges, all oranges are bananas. From these 2, what is the conclusion that you can draw? What is the inference that you can draw? Yes, all apples are oranges and all oranges are bananas. Therefore, we can draw that all apples are bananas. So, this is how your categorical argument looks like. So, the first 2 statements are called premises, or it is also known as categorical statements. We were defining it in the same way. and the term that is common to the premises is called the middle term. So, what is the term that is common in the previous case? All apples are oranges. In the first sentence it is there, in the first premises it is there, in the second premises also that the term is there. What is that term? That term we call it as a middle term. Apples are oranges, oranges are bananas. So, what is the middle term here? In this particular case, oranges will become the middle term. So, the first two statements are called premises, that is the word notation we use, and then the term that is common to the premises is called the middle term. So, in the above example, orange is common to the premises and hence it is known as the middle term. So, a standard syllogism looks like this. It must contain 3 and only 3 propositions, 2 of which are premises and the third is the conclusion. So, what is a proposition? Proposition is nothing but the categorical statement. We are calling a categorical statement as a proposition also. So, a standard syllogism contains 3 and only 3 propositions, 2 of which are premises and the third is the conclusion that you are going to draw. So, the 2 premises and conclusion share 3 and only 3 terms. What are the 3 terms in the previous thing? You were speaking about apples, oranges, bananas. So, those are the 3 terms. So, the 2 premises and conclusion. Conclusion also should speak only about these the terms that are there in the premises. So, the 2 premises and conclusions share 3 and only 3 terms. So, in the above example, 3 terms are apples, oranges and bananas. A term appears twice, but never twice in the same proposition. So, these are the small little rules that you will have to remember to draw conclusions or inferences from any given categorical statements or propositions. So, as typical syllogism looks like this. A standard syllogism contains 3 and only 3 propositions, 2 of which are premises and the third is the conclusion that you are going to draw. So, what is that you should observe? The 2 premises and conclusions share 3 and only 3 terms. In the above example, 3 terms are apples, oranges and bananas. A term appears twice. Which is the term that has appeared twice? Oranges has appeared twice. A term can appear twice, but never in the same proposition. So, with this understanding, if you want to define syllogism, how do you define? Syllogism is an argument having 2 premises and a conclusion. All these put together you call it as a syllogism. So, syllogism is an argument having 2 premises and a conclusion. So, the subject having 2 premises and the conclusion with the subject term. Conclusion also will have a subject term. So, in both the premises there will be subject and in the conclusion also there will be subject. So, a syllogism is an argument having 2 premises and a conclusion. So, with this little definition of syllogism, let me take into the next term which is required here, that is distribution of the terms. How are the terms that are appearing in your categorical statements distributed? So, what are the terms? What do you mean by the terms? I told you like all A's, B's, apples, oranges, those are the terms. So, you call a term as a distributed if it is completely known to us. What do you mean by completely known to us? If you are referring to universal affirmative statements or universal negative statements, in that what is happening? You are speaking about all apples. That means you know about all the apples. Apples are completely known. In that case, we call it as that the term apple is said to be distributed. So, that is what you mean by distribution of terms. So, if we have complete information about the term, we say that they are distributed. Like example, all apples are oranges. So, we are speaking about all apples. That means, we have the knowledge or information about all the apples. So, we say that apples are distributed. Whereas, when it comes to oranges, all apples are oranges. What would be the converse of this statement? The converse of the statement would be some oranges are apples. You cannot draw any further conclusion, isn't it? You know that all apples are oranges, but what about all oranges? You do not know. Since all apples are oranges, all that we know is at least some oranges will be apples. So, the converse of this statement, if you are looking at, it would be like some apples are oranges. So, when you are talking about some apples, you do not know the knowledge, some oranges, you do not have the knowledge of all the oranges. Therefore, oranges is not distributed. Is it clear? Is the term distribution clear? In any categorical statement, you say that the term is distributed if its knowledge is completely known to us. So, a particular example that we were discussing is all apples are oranges. Hello? Hello?
Morning, madam.
Yes?
Madam, ikkada all apples are oranges అని అన్నారు కదా మేడం. అయితే అవి కన్వర్సేషన్ అనేది సమ్ ఆరెంజెస్ ఆర్ యాపిల్స్ అని కన్వర్సేషన్ చేయాలా లేకపోతే సమ్ యాపిల్స్ ఆర్ ఆరెంజెస్ అని అనాలా మేడం?
కాదు, all apples, you know the knowledge of all apples are oranges. Okay.
Okay.
But you do not know about the oranges. Only what is that we can conclude? At the most some oranges are apples, because we cannot say about all oranges. All oranges may be apples or may not be apples, but all apples are oranges. So, the converse for this would be some apples, some oranges are apples. So, when I am talking about some oranges, definitely I do not know about all the oranges. Therefore, oranges term is not distributed, whereas apples is distributed, because I know about all apples are oranges. Okay, that is what you mean by distribution of terms. So, how do you identify in different categorical statements whether the term is distributed or not? So, I will give you a little table here, distribution of subject and predicate. So, if your statement is of universal affirmative, then your subject is always distributed, like all oranges are apples. So, what is the subject there? Subject is apples. What is the predicate there? Predicate is oranges. So, subject is distributed and predicate is not distributed. So, please make a note of these things. If you are talking about universal affirmative, always your subject is distributed and predicate is not distributed. If you are talking about particular affirmative, how does it look like? Some apples are oranges. That means, you do not know the knowledge of complete apples, you do not know the knowledge of complete oranges. Therefore, if your statement is of particular affirmative, we say that the subject is not distributed and also the predicate is not distributed, because it is only speaking about particular thing, it is not complete, it is not, we do not have the information of complete subject or complete predicate. Therefore, if your statement is of the form particular affirmative, then subject is not distributed, predicate is also not distributed. If your statement is about universal negative,